You're walking through the woods, someone is just ahead of you. You look away just for a moment. When you look back, they're gone. You look around, but nobody's there. Just silence. Where did they go? The date was the 12th of November 1945. The place was Glastenbury Mountain in the state of Vermont. Among a group of hunters was a 74-year-old local man called Middy Rivers. He knew these woods well. In fact, he guided people through them for years. As the group made their way home, Middy walked a little way ahead. At first, nobody was worried because they expected to catch up with him eventually. But somewhere along the trail, he disappeared. Search teams were organised. Local people joined in. They searched the woods for days. No sign of where he'd gone. Nobody knew what had happened. At the time, it seemed like one tragic disappearance. It was only later people began to see a pattern. Over the next 5 years, 4 more people would disappear within just a few miles of where Middy Rivers was last seen. Years later, one author would give that small area a name: the Bennington Triangle. Just over a year passed. The disappearance of Middy Rivers remained a mystery. Then, on the 1st of December 1946, an 18-year-old student called Paula Jean Weldon set out for a walk along Vermont's Long Trail. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Paula had decided to go walking alone. Along the trail, several people remembered seeing Paula. She stopped briefly to speak to another hiker, then carried on along the trail. When Paula failed to return, a huge search began. Hundreds of volunteers helped. Police searched the area. Aircraft flew overhead. But there was no sign of Paula. Three years passed. The disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon remained unsolved. Then, on the 1st of December 1949, another person disappeared. His name was James Tedford. James was a military veteran. That day, he was travelling back to Bennington by bus. He was last seen during the journey, but James never arrived home. Less than a year later, on the 12th of October 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson was with his mother while she looked after animals nearby. Paul waited just a short time, but when his mother returned, he was gone. People searched the area, but there was no sign of Paul. Just 16 days later, on the 28th of October 1950, Frida Langer disappeared. She had been out walking with members of her family. After slipping into a stream, Frida told her family she would take a shortcut back to the family cabin to change her clothes, but she never arrived. People searched for Frida. Months later, her remains were found. Frida was the only one to be found. By the end of 1950, 5 people had disappeared. Looking back, it's easy to understand why people began asking questions. But before we look at the different theories, let's look at what we know. The 5 people were very different. An experienced outdoorsman, a university student, a military veteran, an 8-year-old boy, and an experienced hiker. They disappeared in different circumstances. Some were walking. One was travelling by bus. One disappeared after being alone for just a short time. There wasn't one simple explanation that fitted every case, but there were a few similarities. Every disappearance happened within the same small area around Glastenbury Mountain. They all happened within 5 years. 4 of the 5 people were never found. Was this simply coincidence? By now, people had started asking some questions. What happened to these 5 people? Over the years, many different ideas have been suggested. Some are based on the landscape, others suggest something far more unusual. But before we go any further, it's important to remember none of these theories have ever been proven. So let's look at them one at a time. The simplest explanation is the landscape itself. The woods around Glastenbury Mountain are large, rugged and heavily forested. Bad weather, steep ground and thick woodland can make searching extremely difficult. It's possible that some of these disappearances were tragic accidents, but that idea doesn't seem to answer every question. Another possibility is that one or more disappearances involved another person. Some people believe the cases could have been crimes. Others think the disappearance may not be connected at all. The difficulty is there isn't enough evidence to prove either idea. The more you look, the more questions there seem to be. Nearly 80 years later, the Bennington Triangle is still talked about. Some people believe the answer lies in the landscape. Others believe there is something more that we still don't understand. After all this time, we still don't know. What we do know is that 5 people disappeared. 5 families were left without answers. And almost 80 years later, those answers still haven't come. Perhaps that's why people still talk about the Bennington Triangle, not because we know what happened, but because we don't. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious.